Hello everybody, welcome into the Hobby Bar. This is Jason, and welcome. Today we'll be continuing work on this Shroud Queen from Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry. Want to start building up layers, getting the colors all done up, and getting her closer to completion. So, this is where she was last week, and we'll be diving in here, getting more stuff closer to being done. I think probably one more day of building up layers, maybe two. First off, we're gonna come in here with some Army Painter Dark Tone. I wanted to try this stuff out on the mini, just to bring the purple down to a darker black, and sort of build that in, darken that up. Original thought was going to be to use Nuln Oil or Basilicanum Grey, but we'll get to that later. Mostly just wanted to try different paints, and the dark tone here went on very well. Did exactly what I wanted it to do, though I think I might need another layer. But we'll get to that later. Anyway, gonna be building up paint layers here. I think we'll try 4 times speed again, just to keep the duration down. So if you want to run things back in relatively real time, you can slow the video down in these parts, though frame rate probably won't be great, but at least then you can run it at relatively normal speed in case you want to just chill for a while longer. No audio except for original, or basically the intro and ending. This way you can listen to whatever you want, and you kind of have an audio cue other than my voice for when we're starting and ending. Anyway, we'll go ahead and power through this, adding on this dark tone. There will be a lot of paint swapping back and forth and trying out a bunch of different paints, so we're going to be running through a list of them as we go on, but you can see all the chapters and how it's divided up. So anyway, we'll go ahead and truck on through here with fast forwarding. I'll catch up with y'all in a little bit when we get to the next paint. Alright, I just wanted to leave this in because this was my Nuln Oil. I don't know how it got to this state where it's effectively just a really solid gel on the bottom. It basically has set itself up in the pot, and it's the first time it's happened to me, but yeah, so that's going to be the Nuln Oil. I kind of poke it a couple times with the tip of the brush, and it just leaves a small divot in the bottom, and I don't really get any paint on the brush there, so that's dead. Oh well, move on to the next color. Alrighto, so next up we're going to use some Harlot Red from Cuttlefish Colors. Originally I was going to go in with Corn Red and just base coat the hair that way, but figured I'd give the Cuttlefish Colors a shot base coating. I haven't really used them much for that purpose. I generally use them for layering up because they're a fairly thin paint, and they're pre-thinned and all that, so base coating coverage is to me a little weak. But when you're building up layers and trying to blend and stuff, that's kind of where the paints shine through. So Because I'm just doing a general base coat that's gray on these, I probably should have come in and done a base coat of some color, whether that be with an ink or what have you. Which actually that probably wouldn't have been a better idea, is to start with an ink. Maybe the purple ink with a bit of red in it, or red ink with a bit of purple in it. And then we build up from there. But I wanted to see how this would work out using the Cuttlefish color here as a base coat. So starting out the hair red though, with this slightly purplish red. And then we'll come in with another color to highlight the red, and it'll get it a little more closer to the corn red color that I originally wanted it to be at the start. But we'll go ahead and go around on this with the Harlot Red for a few times and then build up that color. And I'll catch you all in a little bit. Alright, here we are with Citadel Abaddon Black. Using this stuff for the boots on the mini. Just to make them match my other miniatures in the force. Because all of them have shiny black boots, other than the armor plates that are on them. And those armor plates are done up in gold. So, even though these are supposed to be the spies and stuff figure, they can still match the general color scheme of the army. And basically what I do for these boots is just paint them Abaddon Black and then add some ard coat over them, or gloss varnish, to sort of give them, I want to say it's patent leather look, but I think that's wrong. Just the shiny leather look for the boots, and works very well for me. It makes it way easier to paint, because then base coat, gloss varnish, done. Like, no real highlights needed. So that's why I like doing it this way. Keeps it simple for me. We'll go ahead though and build up a couple layers of this stuff on there, on the mini. What I probably could have done was just use some Vallejo black ink and just knock the color right down. But I wanted to use up some of these other paints that I have and get them on there this way. So going with the old classic method of just doing a base coat with a base paint from Citadel. So go ahead and work on that, and we'll be hopping around on colors here shortly, so be prepared for that. So catch you with all here in a bit for the next color. Alright, here we are moving on to Cuttlefish Colors White Knight. What I'm using this for is to base coat the face shield on the mini. Because what I want to do is I want to come in with that Turbo Dork color shift paint up there. And knock that and put that over the face shield. This way it sort of has this color shifting magicalness to the face shield instead of just being whatever color. And it saves me from having to paint some fanciness onto it. So, in the spirit of keeping it simple, I'll just color shift the face shield on her, and call that good. But here in a bit, we'll be going back to the Citadel Abaddon Black. So, well, just because this paint needs a few coats on here just to build it up, and I don't want to keep working it while it's drying and setting, so want to bring in another color. So that's why right now I'm back to Abaddon Black to hit back to get another layer of the color onto the boots and build up that darkness on it. So we'll be going through with that and making that happen. And we'll go ahead and fast forward through this second part of building up Abaddon Black until we go back to the white for the face mask. So I'll catch up with you all here in a bit for that. Alright, now we're back to the white Knight from Cuttlefish Colors, and we'll be continuing to apply this on the mask just to build up that layer again. And then I decided to build up the clothing part of the mini to this white, because then we'll come back much later on and knock it back to sort of that slightly brownish linen color. With a wash over all of it. So right now I just wanted to get another layer of paint onto the mask, and then we'll go ahead and give that a bit of time, like do a jump here to a little bit after that's dried a bit more, applying another layer to it, because again I found Cuttlefish Colors are a little weak for an initial base coat, but for layering they work very well. So maybe if I zenithal or did some fanciness to it, then it wouldn't be as bad, but as you saw previously, I just brush primed this mini and went at it, so I noticed there was some texture building up, and I wanted to try to even it out, so just with a wet brush trying to wipe it down a little bit, and yeah. But then we move on to, again, we'll use the same color to hit all of the, to go over the wraithbone that we used on the clothes. And that's what we're doing here right now. With just building up colors on it. This way it comes up to a nice bright white, and then we'll hit it back with a wash later. So anyway, again, go ahead and wrap this up and catch up with y'all here in a bit for the next color. Alright, here we are moving on to Cuttlefish Colors Crawdaddy Red. Nice, pretty strong bright red again. I think I've used it a few other times for other minis. But this over the Harlot Red pretty much gives a close approximation to what Corn Red would have done. So it takes a couple more layers to build there. But it gets about to the same color, so that'll be nice. One thing I noticed, the Cuttlefish Colors didn't seem to bind to the primer as well. It's a little weird because later on I'll need to hold the mini somehow, and instead of holding it by the knife like I am now, which is just a prime piece, I was holding it by the hair, and I noticed for the erased parts I was rubbing off the paint. It was becoming gray again. So we'll have to come back to this color. But anyway, we're just going around layering it up with a bit of Crawdaddy Red over the Harlot Red. to give it sort of a brightness over that sort of slightly purplish red, and get closer to the corn red color that I originally wanted on it. Mostly because my corn red is also kind of dying, but it's not nearly as bad as the Nuln Oil, which I have to get rid of. Anyway, we'll go ahead and layer that up on here for now, and I'll catch up with you all here on the next color. Alright, next up we are going to be using some Citadel contrast, Basilicanum Grey. And for this, I want to come back over all the parts that we use the Army Painter dark tone on. Just to sort of build in that darkness on the cloak. We're first trying it on the little separated bit, because that's going to be easier to fix anything in case I don't like how it looks. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and throw that on there. I'm pretty happy with how it looks. So we then go over the whole mini with the whole shroud all the way over it with Basilicanum Grey as well. One thing for contrast, you notice I'm working straight out of the pot. It's generally okay to do so. You don't necessarily need to use a palette for it. I don't have much palette space left, so that's why I'm not bothering. Sure, I could just use a new sheet, but I figure I can work through this mini, because most of the colors on there are likely to be used on this mini, even though some of them aren't, because I was using it for a previous project as well. So, yeah, I might have to change that palette paper out. Anyway, we'll go ahead and finish up coating the bluish purplish dark toned shroud with this Basilicanum Grey all over, and I'll catch up with y'all here in a little while when we move on to the next paint, which will probably be reapplying some other paints. So catch up with y'all in a bit for that. Alrighty, here we are moving back to some of the Cuttlefish Colors White Knight, just to try to get that paint back on the face plate again. I noticed some of it looked like it was wearing off, so I wanted to give it another coat over it, just to see if I can just try to make it strong enough and hold up as a base coat. Then we come back in with Abaddon Black, because I noticed some spots were a little weak for it. And wanted to hit up the boots again. It was about now that I realized that I was applying it to the shroud now, not to the boots, because there were some areas I wanted to darken up in, like, the bends. It was about now that I figured I probably should have kept this shroud attached to the shroud that wraps on the front. This way I can have easy access to the whole mini. But the nice part is I can stand it right now, stand it up on its own, without having to use like a pin or anything, so I think this was still the right call, but there's also something to be said for leaving this shroud unattached. Now, we're going to move on to working on the skin. So for the skin, you remember I used Citadel base Cadian Flesh initially for it, and now we're going in for a slightly brighter color. It's a Citadel Bloodreaver Flesh, and this is sort of it's the bottom one on the row of paints there, next to my left hand, and it's a lighter tone than the Cadian Flesh. So basically Cadian Flesh I want to leave there for the recesses, and as shadows and shadowy areas for the mini. It will be highlighting up from there, all the way up to using Cadian Flesh eventually later for finest detail highlighting. But right now we're just going to use Bloodreaver Flesh and go around, highlight up some parts, most parts of the skin, actually. That fourth paint there's a dry paint, and I was using that on a bigger mini that I was doing, and I like the effect of putting that on with a dry brush. I initially was going to try doing that on this smaller mini, but I really don't have the room to use a dry brush on it at this point, and I don't think I'll be able to do it. I might get some red in on the skin with a different paint, but that might come next episode if I decide to try it. I'm kind of happy with how the skin turns out at the end of this, so we might just leave it there. Anyway, we'll go ahead and wrap up applying the Bloodreaver Flesh, and I'll catch up with y'all here in a bit for the next color for the skin. Alrighty, here we are. We're going to be applying some Citadel Knight-Questor Flesh. So this is an even brighter skin tone from the Bloodreaver Flesh. This is the next color, next step up from that, basically. I kind of used to use this as a final highlight, very fine highlight on the mini, but I found that I like adding in some spots with a very fine highlight of Cadian Flesh above these others. Cadian Flesh, Bloodreaver Flesh, Knight-Questor Flesh kind of came out around the same time, just to make it easier to do darker skin tones. And while I was originally happy with the result of just using those three as sort of a triad, I kind of feel like it needed something else added in, and I wasn't sure what it was, and sort of building all the way up to fine highlighting with the Cadian Fleshtone kind of helps. I still feel like it's missing something, and it might build it up to too medium of a flesh tone instead of a darker flesh tone, but I'm not that great working with the skin tones anyway, so something I'm working on, trying to get better at. But all just takes work and time. And yeah, we'll go ahead though and continue applying some of this Knight-Questor Flesh, mostly on raised areas, but areas where it should be highlight. And yeah, we'll go ahead and get that done, and I'll catch up with you here for the next color. Alrighty, here we are with the final highlight color of Cadian Fleshtone on the Mini. Again, this is a very medium to light flesh tone. And what I was doing here was I was trying sort of the two-brush technique that I was doing on a bigger Mini, where I apply some paint, then with a dry brush I come over it and move it around, but the dry brush is just too big to use with a small Mini, with a normal smaller scale Mini like this. I was using it on a much larger scale Mini, like a 1/8 Mini. 1/8 figure, I should say, instead of a Mini. So what I end up doing is actually kind of doing some two-brush blending instead, where the idea with two-brush blend is you use one brush as your paint applying brush, second brush is sort of a clean brush to move around paint, and sort of lighten it up as it gets out, and basically work your blends with a second brush while you apply with one brush. This way you're not applying and moving paint with the same brush kind of idea. Only downside is using this number 2 with the orange handle and this number 1 liner with the brown handle, it tends to make the paint start drying on the number 2 brush. So it was a little difficult, but I started to get the hang of it, and eventually was kind of happy with the results of it. Really haven't been working on my blends all that much over the years, so it was pretty fun to just sort of try this after working on a larger scale figure and being like, well, actually it kind of works out. So that was a fun experiment of doing this and trying to work on two brush blending. But anyway, we'll go ahead and go around highlighting up the skin with this Cadian Fleshtone, and then we'll move on to the next color, which don't think we spend long on it, but we'll get there when we get there. Alrighty, we're jumping back to Crawdaddy Red for the hair, because this was when I noticed, hey, I've been grabbing the hair a lot and the paint is coming off. I usually don't have that problems with base paints from Citadel, because they tend to bind up tighter. So, I don't know. I don't know whether it was I was putting a lot of pressure on it or what, but it was rubbing off the paint and kind of made me sad, so we gotta come in and fix that up. So, go ahead and add in another layer of the Crawdaddy Red over it, and we'll figure out the color to do the hair another time, because next up we'll be jumping into another paint. Alrighty, next up we'll be using some Citadel Retributor Armour here on the metallic bits of the mini. So we'll be picking out the emblem here, like I'm doing right now, on the shroud that goes around her. And then also picking out the tip of the staff and the, I guess, spikes on the face shield. I'm never sure what to call those things that are coming off of her head. It's not really like a circlet or anything. Maybe a headdress. I'll go with headdress. We'll, the spikes on the headdress, the metal bracers on her arms. Not quite sure what to do with the dagger. Might just make it a dark metal, or just an elven metal kind of look, because elven metal is pretty easy, and that's how I have daggers for their other stuff going. With, maybe with some of the rune work on this, I'll try to darken it up though, instead of making it just elven for the full thing. Maybe the runes are giving off some, shadowy look, so I might add some purple into them or something. We'll figure that out when we get to that fine detail work. But for now, we're just gonna apply some of this, base paint metallic from Citadel. Again, Retributor Armour. Go around on all of these. And, oh yeah, also the knee pads will also be gold on the mini. So, yeah. We'll go through and pick out all the gold stuff with this. And then, nice and easy process. And I'll catch up with y'all here on the next paint. Alrighty, here we are using some Army Painter Light Tone Quickshade. This will be used on the clothing of the mini to bring that back down into more of a sort of slightly brownish linen look instead of being pretty dark or pretty bright white from the white Knight that we applied to it earlier. So just want to go around the mini applying this over it. I'm using a well here, one of the wells on the palette, because A, short on space on the wet palette, but mostly B, because I didn't feel like I needed the wet palette for the shader. So that's why I figured, we can just try out one of the wells. Downside to using wells, cleaning them out. I still haven't figured out a good way to clean out this stuff without scratching the heck out of the plastic, so this is the first paint going into these wells. I've generally avoided it, which maybe you can tell because of how dusty they are. I'm not sure how well that comes through on camera, but yeah, those wells are not used at all, so first time using them. What I did though, just to try to help the paint move a bit more, was I added a bit of water on before I added the paint in. But yeah, we'll go ahead and coat up this with the Quickshade light tone. And this whole portion for the painting will likely be muted because there was yard work going on. People with blowers walking around. So yeah, that's why if there's a drone in the background, that means I didn't remove the audio, and sorry about that. But I'm trying to remember to while doing the recording. Anyway, with that, we're here on the next color already. Next up, we're going to be applying some of that Turbo Dork color shift paint, the Motherlode one. And this is going over the face mask only. The idea behind this is I want the face mask to sort of be kind of magical, so I wanted to use the color shift on it. And color shift is interesting to apply, because it kind of needs a couple layers. And putting it on by brush is fine. It's just ideally you want to use an airbrush with this stuff. But yeah. So we'll just be putting on a couple of, I would say, relatively thick coats of this stuff. I tend to apply it more like I would apply, say, a varnish by brush, because if you're applying a varnish by brush, you don't want brush strokes to come through either, so it feels like you kind of apply it a bit thicker than you otherwise would. So I try that here on the face mask. Now we are going back to the light tone though, after it's dried on the clothing. I'm going to do a second layer of it. I noticed that the light tone is very, very mild in how strong it is, versus some of the other quick shades, which are pretty strong in how they apply. So even though the color looks fairly brown in the well, you can tell where it's settled it's very strong, but it's not very strong on the white parts of the well, where I've sort of wiped off the brush from time to time up on like the sides. So I'm pretty happy with how light tone works, just because it tends to be more like Seraphim Sepia, which is what I normally use on these, but trying to branch out, use some other company's stuff. Anyway, we'll go ahead and finish applying this coat onto the gold as well, because I wanted to add some depth into the gold without going to flesh tone, because usually I use one of the flesh tone washes. I don't remember what it's called offhand, but usually I would use that. But anyway, go ahead and wrap this up, and I'll catch you up with you all here for the spin and the last call. Last call, everybody. Last call. So for today's last call, got this mini pretty close to completion. Maybe just another episode of 2 on it, maybe, depending on how intricate we want to get on basing. But we'll see how long this takes us to wrap up. Question for y'all. What would you think if I just left all of it running at 2 times speed? Versus some parts slow, some parts fast. Because then with the speed controls for YouTube, maybe you can slow it down, and if you want to run it back at normal speed. Frame rate might not be the best, and voiceover might be a bit awkward at points if I do voiceover, so that's my only 2 things. Mostly the voiceover, since that's the way I'm going right now. But, yeah, let me know down below if you feel like maybe slowing or just leaving all of it running fast is fine, just to keep the playtime down, or if you want me to just upload longer videos even, like just heck with it. We'll let it do what? This one would be, what, about an hour, 20 minutes, if I didn't speed up sections to 4 times, but yeah. Give me thoughts down below, or if you have any questions about anything that was going on. And, yeah. Thank you all for watching, and hope you got some stuff done. Anyway, take care everybody, and have a good one out there. Hope to see you next time. Take care out there.